Barcelona are an attacking machine under Hansi Flick, and defensive balance aside, they might just be the best in the world at consistently creating high quality chances. And today I'm going to explore 3 reasons why they score so many goals, starting with 1, creating and exploiting space. On the surface, Barca's approach to space is relatively straightforward. Like many teams, they make the pitch big horizontally, often with a fullback on one side and a winger on the other, and overload the space in between, with often 4 but sometimes even 5 or 6 players. Then typically you'll see the ball circulate from side to side as they look for space to appear. For example, if the opponent stays compact, then they'll go wide. They do this a lot, they're actually one of the most frequent switchers in Europe, but when the opponent gets stretched, they'll then play between the lines. Notably though, despite how often they get the ball wide, Barca are very infrequent crossers, because when it does go wide, there's much more emphasis on going back inside, making diagonal passes back into that overload rather than attacking the fullback, which as a side note, is a significant difference from the Xavi era. So that's the basic blueprint, but it's far from doing Barca's attack justice, because in reality, their relationship with space is far more nuanced. What really stands out is how in tune players are with each other's movement and the effect that it has on the opponent. So this is a pretty typical rotation, but a good example. Balde and Rafinha make a counter movement, one pushing forward, one dropping deep. That distracts the fullback who was originally marking Rafinha. Casado then pulls wide to drag the attention of the midfielder, and you see space opens up for the Brazilian inside. And it's this kind of shared understanding of movement and space that allows Barca to get inside the opposition block. So here Pedri is the one making the first movement, dragging his marker away. Eric Garcia realizes, occupies the space, and the final piece is the recognition from Casado. And this is powerful because when you get inside a block like this, you can directly attack the back line from a central position. But one of the biggest reasons Barca are so lethal this season is that they're not just getting inside the opponent, they're also going over them. And on this, I have to talk about this guy. Opera One R2 is the reimagined browser from Opera, and it's got a bunch of new features that makes my life a lot easier when I'm researching and writing these videos. For example, with split screen, I can simply pull down one tab next to another, and just like that, I've got 2 tabs side by side without opening a new window. And speaking of tabs, since I often have lots of sites open, tab traces is a smart way to help me navigate them. Recently visited tabs are underscored, a darker underscore means more recently opened, allowing you to keep track of where you are. But on top of that, you've also got tab islands, which allows you to group your tabs based on content. That can be done automatically, or you can manually organize them by category. You can even collapse and expand tabs whenever you need them to reduce clutter. Possibly most important for me though is the floating music player. Since I'm always listening to music while working, having those controls right there is super convenient, and you can move it wherever you need, even outside of the browser screen. But finally and most powerfully, we have Aria, Opera's built-in AI tool. Easily open up Aria's command line with Control or Command +/, and you can have any question answered right there on the same page. You can even have Aria generate images based on prompts, or use image recognition to get instant information on any image. All of this in a browser with dynamic and customizable themes for a truly personal experience. So make sure to download Opera today using the first link in the description. Now, Rafinha has played a number of positions this season, on the left, through the middle, and on the right, but under Flick, it's his role that has fundamentally changed, going from primarily a creator into generally more of an outlet. In fact, it's quite useful to think about Rafinha virtually as a centre-forward partner to Lewandowski, and they do frequently operate with that dynamic. The principle behind that partnership is exactly the same as we've just discussed, where one player's movement creates space, triggering the other to move into that space. And there's a clear intention to attack this way. In fact, here you can see Lewandowski even point to that empty space before Rafinha recognises it. But what has made this so deadly is that Rafinha playing off the shoulder like this is honestly one of the best in the world. Not just the timing, but the intensity of these sprints are incredible, the way he curves to always stay onside, and he's been very clinical from these positions. Even in games where Barca haven't managed to get inside the opponent almost at all, they've scored 3, 4, 5 goals just because of the option to go directly over the top. But of course these runs aren't just about receiving the ball. I said it can feel like a partnership with Lewandowski, and it's often him dropping to take up those spaces. Regardless, Rafinha's insistence is an invaluable piece to Barcelona's attack, creating opportunities and space that wouldn't otherwise be there. And I put a lot of value on this reimagining of Rafinha because it's this kind of sensitivity to a player's true value that's really impressed me about Hansi Flick. We'll continue to see actually that much of what makes Barca so deadly is they maximise the quality they have and allow players to do what they're naturally inclined to do. And on that note, I have to finish this section on space by mentioning a crucial piece of the puzzle, the players that make these attacks possible, and they are the centre-backs, and in particular, Pau Cubarsí. At just 17, not only is Cubarsí an excellent defender, his appreciation for the movement and space ahead of him is really masterful. It's all good moving your opponent around, but if you can't fire the ball into those gaps or over the top, then it's for nothing. And Cubarsí does it for fun. Finding the right player at the right time, with quality, and sometimes even with a bit of disguise to trick the opponent. So overall, Barca make the pitch big, they create space with their movement, and they're very good at finding those spaces, allowing them to attack the back line from a central position, where they play over 3 through balls per game and 10 passes into the box, the most in La Liga. And these are things that any mostly positional team would be proud of. But I've got to say that too many teams, and frankly too many coaches, stop there. They obsess over creating space and finding players in space, but not on what happens next. And it's here that Flick's Barca have another dimension and probably can get even better. So let's talk about that. The signing of Dani Olmo was a lot more calculated than most people realised. It wasn't just that he was Spanish and had a good European Championship, it's that he gave Barca something very important, and I want to use this clip to demonstrate that.
Here's Pedri. Lovely flick from Dani Olmo.
Here Barca are doing everything I've just talked about. Lewandowski dropping in, Rafinha's run creates a pocket of space, and Olmo fills that space. But it's what happens next that's important. Because yes, Olmo was attuned to the empty space, which was necessary, but he's also attuned to his teammate, in this case Pedri. And it's that allows him to use the space effectively. So when Pedri makes the pass in the run, Olmo can find him without even thinking, which is how that space, that potential, becomes actual threat. Now, Barcelona have a few players who are good at this. Rafinha is pretty in tune with his teammates and is also playing these first-time passes. Lamine Yamal certainly is as well. And Pedri, who was once more of a 10, is one of the best. And the beauty of it is that within the roles Flick has given them, all of these players can express that aspect of their game. So Rafinha is primarily utilising those runs, but can also drop deeper into the pockets and combine. Lamine Yamal is primarily looking to isolate himself against the fullback, but can also come inside and combine. And Pedri is doing most of the tempo control, the ball retention, the finding players in space, but as that second midfielder, he can also push forward, get into those pockets, and you guessed it, combine. The reason I highlighted Olmo in particular though, is that while those others make this an element of their game, for Olmo it's really the foundation of it. As the first choice 10, his main concern is to occupy these spaces and combine with those around him. And when he's not available, this more relational aspect of Barca's attack certainly weakens. Which is why, as effective as they've been, having Olmo consistently fit should raise their ceiling even higher, as these relationships do take time to develop. The reason it's so important to have players that do this is that you're no longer just rotating positions looking to create gaps. Now you have a mechanism to go directly through your opponent, even in tight areas when space is at a premium. So if there's one thing to take away from this video, it's that more teams and coaches should put greater emphasis on developing these combinations, attuning players not just to the space, but to the players around them as well. However, there's one more thing that Barcelona have that many other teams simply cannot replicate, and it's got nothing to do with any tactic or coaching at all really. Can you guess what it is? Hansi Flick's Barcelona have what I like to call game breakers, technical qualities that tactics simply cannot account for. So Rafinha's running in behind, or Olmo shooting from distance, Pedri's ridiculous passing range. But there's one player that really takes them to another level, and that is Lamine Yamal. Because in situations where Barca are struggling or the game is tight, it's his ability that shows up to solve problems. The most mature part of his game, even at 17, is his creative passing. He has mastered the trivela basically across any distance, and that has opened up a whole suite of attacking options. Deep crosses, half-space runs, through balls over distance, you name it. And then of course we have his dribbling. In a team that's very meticulous about how they find space, Lamine Yamal adds yet another dimension, the ability to commit a player with the ball at his feet, creating chances from 1v1 situations. And just like Olmo's combinations, this is an option even when space is limited. But then, when we put these two qualities together, the dribbling and the passing, we have one of the main reasons Barca have become such a threat in transition. With Lamine Yamal at the base and Rafinha running in behind, you've got a recipe for really devastating counterattacks. And like I said, it's generally when games are tight that these qualities tend to show up. And Barca can end up scoring a load of goals that their general play might not even merit. So taking a step back, we can see why, in many ways, Barcelona are a near complete attacking team. Firstly, they are great at exploiting space, able to manipulate blocks and go around, through, or over. Secondly, they know how to combine with each other, which turns that space into more tangible threat and makes them less predictable. And thirdly, they have game-breaking players that can produce moments even if they're suffering tactically. Put all of that together and you have a team that scores, on average, over 3 times a game. For more Barcelona analysis, head over to Patreon, where you can get a bonus podcast on topics that didn't quite make this video, including Flick's fullback diagonals, the role of Pedri and Casado, and Barca's recent dip in form. Thanks to all my current members for your support, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.